Hello everyone, welcome to Six Path Weeb. Today's fanfiction discussion centers around an intriguing what-if scenario. What if Naruko was raised by the legendary Sannin? Disclaimer. The content presented on this channel is intended solely for entertainment and discussion purposes. I do not claim ownership of any anime footage featured in my videos. All rights and credits belong to their respective creators and copyright holders. Let's dive right in. 5 years had passed since the incident involving the great fox spirit, Kyubi no Kitsune. 5 years since the creature was sealed within the newborn daughter of the Yondaime Hokage, also known as the Yellow Flash of Konoha. Sarutobi stood quietly, his gaze fixed on the 4 great stone faces carved into the mountainside. His eyes traveled from the first Hokage to the second, then rested briefly on his own before pausing at the 4th. A somber expression passed across his features. Still so young. And yet your time came too soon, he thought, just as a white-haired man entered the room, followed closely by a masked shinobi with silver hair. The door creaked open, and Sarutobi turned from the window to greet his guests. Standing before him were Jiraiya of the Sannin and Hatake Kakashi, Anbu captain. Jiraiya, ever relaxed, gazed out of the window while Kakashi stood at attention, awaiting instructions. Ohio, Sarutobi-sensei. So, what was so important that you had me pulled from my work? Jiraiya asked casually, though he clearly wasn't thrilled about being summoned. Kakashi remained composed. Sarutobi smiled slightly, took a seat behind his desk, and invited the two to do the same. He lit his pipe, puffing thoughtfully before addressing them again. I understand you're still coping with her absence, he said gently. Both men turned their eyes downward, weighed down by guilt and sorrow. I had Kakashi track you down, Jiraiya, because we have an important matter to discuss, Sarutobi continued, his voice calm and firm. As you both know, the Kyubi no Kitsune was sealed into a newborn, not just any child, but the daughter of the Yondaime Hokage. Jiraiya and Kakashi looked up, listening closely. It took over 3 years to locate you, Sarutobi said to Jiraiya. In the meantime, I took responsibility for Naruko's care. She has been in the temporary guardianship of the Uchiha clan, who not only protected her but also began training her in shinobi fundamentals. Jiraiya's eyes widened slightly. You had the Uchiha clan teach her? Sarutobi nodded. They treated her kindly and even helped with her early education. However, not everyone in the village views her as a symbol of hope. Some cannot see beyond the beast sealed within her. That's why I'm asking for both of your help. Jiraiya, he said seriously, I want you to become a Jounin sensei again. Help guide Naruko. You and Kakashi are among the few who knew her father well. Jiraiya shot up from his seat, surprised. Why me? Why not Tsunade? I'm not cut out for raising a kid. Sarutobi raised a hand to calm him. Your home here has been preserved, and you will not be doing this alone. Kakashi will be by your side, acting as an older brother figure. But under no circumstances should you reveal Naruko's heritage. That remains a secret. Kakashi, who had remained quiet, asked gently, where is Naruko now? Sarutobi glanced at the clock and smiled. She's at the academy. She's doing remarkably well. In fact, she's advanced beyond many children her age. Sarutobi stood, leading the two out of the office. She's intelligent, full of energy, and determined to become strong. Her resilience amazes me. Though she faced challenges early on, including being targeted out of fear, the Uchiha clan, particularly Itachi and his father, helped protect her. When I finally told her about the unique chakra sealed inside her, she was understandably upset, but after some time alone to reflect, she came to me and asked how she could become stronger to honor her father's final wish. As they walked, Sarutobi continued. I homeschooled her in the basics, math, history, and essential shinobi knowledge, before enrolling her in the academy. This is her 2nd year. Upon arriving at the academy, the bell signaled the end of class. Children poured out of the building. Sarutobi guided them to a classroom where a small, lively blonde girl sat attentively. When the instructor motioned for her to turn, the girl's face lit up with excitement. She dashed over, beaming. Oh Jisun. Guess what? I've almost mastered the basics. I can do Henge no Jutsu and Kawarimi no Jutsu, and next week I'll learn Bunshin no Jutsu. Sarutobi knelt to meet her gaze. That's wonderful, Naruko. I'm very proud of you. Now, I'd like you to meet someone. Naruko's eyes shifted to Jiraiya and Kakashi, immediately becoming wary. Her trust didn't come easily. Don't worry, Sarutobi reassured her. They're here to help take care of you. Kakashi stepped forward, kneeling with a friendly smile. Hi there. I'm Hatake Kakashi. What's your name? Naruko studied him, then smiled and shook his hand. I'm Uzumaki Naruko. Jiraiya followed with a dramatic introduction, much to the amusement of everyone in the room. You're silly, Naruko laughed. Are you really going to help teach me? Yep, Jiraiya replied with a sheepish grin. Starting now. With that, Sarutobi explained that Naruko would be staying with Jiraiya while receiving additional training from both him and Kakashi. In the days that followed, Naruko visited the Uchiha estate often, training with Itachi and his father. Jiraiya taught her chakra control and strategic thinking, while Kakashi focused on taijutsu, stamina, and chakra development. When she graduated the academy at age 6 with top marks, they celebrated at Ichiraku Ramen, where she met a kind Chonin named Umino Iruka, who quickly became her friend. However, soon after her graduation, the village was shaken by the Uchiha tragedy. Though Naruko didn't know Sasuke, she mourned the loss of the family who had been kind to her. Sarutobi assigned Naruko to Jiraiya, which sparked debate among the village council, but he defended the decision as honoring the fourth Hokage's final wish. Though grateful for her mentors, Naruko sometimes struggled with loneliness. The villagers were wary, and children her age kept their distance. Still, she smiled through it, refusing to let it break her spirit. In time, she made friends, Shikamaru and Kuji, who became her closest companions. They'd watch clouds, share snacks, or train together. Eventually, Naruko entered the Chunin exams. Held in Akagahara, the challenge was to retrieve a crimson 4-leaf clover. There, she encountered foreign shinobi and showed impressive resolve and talent. By the end, only 15 participants remained, including Naruko. Each received a Chunin flak jacket, officially earning the rank. Following the exam, Jiraiya took Naruko on a long training journey. Over 6 months, she learned to better understand and safely use the chakra sealed inside her. After striking a deal with the fox spirit, she returned to Konoha stronger than ever. By age 7, she was back on missions, learning under Kakashi and completing solo assignments. Jiraiya continued to pass on advanced techniques, including those created by the Yondaime. At 8, she joined Anbu under the guidance of Ibiki Morino and Anko Mitarashi. Meanwhile, Jiraiya was sent on a reconnaissance mission regarding a new organization rising in the shadows. On the day of his departure, Naruko stood at the village gates, dressed in her Anbu gear with a white fox mask, alongside Kakashi. Are you sure he's leaving now, Kakashi-ni-san? She asked. He nodded without looking up from his book, which he quickly hid when he saw Naruko frown at it. With a dramatic pop, Jiraiya appeared and approached her. Well, it's time for me to go, he said warmly, kneeling to meet her eyes. He handed her a scroll. This was left for you by your father. The Hokage might not be happy I gave it to you now, but I believe you're ready to understand the truth behind why the Kyuubi's chakra was entrusted to you. Title: Naruko's Resolve. Kakashi gently placed a hand on Naruko's shoulder as Jiraiya stood tall, ready to depart. I'll return once this mission is complete. Until then, Naruko, continue your training and remember what I taught you. Study the techniques in that scroll, Jiraiya said with a warm grin, one filled with encouragement. Naruko mirrored his expression with a bright smile. Got it, Jiraiya-sensei. I'll master the techniques passed down by the fourth Hokage and show everyone in the village that I can be someone they can rely on. She removed her hood, revealing her wild, golden hair, and carefully placed the scroll into her bag. With a quick hug, she stepped back and waved. Until we meet again, Jiraiya-sensei. Jiraiya's tone shifted slightly, a bit more serious. And if our friend inside you starts acting up, you know how to handle it. Naruko nodded confidently, still smiling, while Kakashi offered a respectful wave. I'm leaving her in your care, Kakashi. I'll send updates along with a new volume as promised, Jiraiya added with a chuckle as he walked away from the village gates. Until next time, Jiraiya-sama, Kakashi replied. Then, in a puff of smoke, he and Naruko vanished, returning to their Anbu duties. Jiraiya glanced back once more before disappearing into the treetops, his thoughts hopeful. Train hard, young Naruko. Make your father proud. 4 years later. The village hidden in the leaves had entered a peaceful and prosperous time under the leadership of the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi. In his office, Sarutobi was quietly reminiscing as he looked at the Hokage monument. On his desk lay a rectangular package addressed to him, Jiraiya's latest report, along with a signed copy of his newest book. A knock interrupted his thoughts. With a calm sigh, he invited the visitor in and tucked the package away. The door opened to reveal a familiar figure. Ohayo, Naruko-kun. I see you've come with your mission report, Sarutobi greeted warmly as he accepted the folder from her. Naruko, now 16, still wore her standard Onbu uniform, though her cloak had changed to a light, well-worn white. She removed her mask and hood as she sat, offering a friendly grin while Sarutobi reviewed her report. After a quiet moment, the Hokage spoke, "So, the mission was a success?" Naruko raised an eyebrow at the question and stood. "Old man, did you even read the report? It clearly says the target was neutralized and the mission was completed successfully." Sarutobi chuckled, a twinkle of amusement in his eye. "You haven't changed a bit." He walked to the window and exhaled a puff from his pipe. "How long have you served as Onbu now, Naruko?" 4 years, Sandaime-sama. "I've been with the Onbu since I was 12, she replied calmly. With only a few close friends like Shikamaru and Kuji, Naruko often trained alone at training ground number 7, honing her skills and mastering her chakra control. She now understood her legacy, the daughter of the 4th Hokage, entrusted with the immense responsibility of safeguarding the village. "Your rank is currently Tokubutsu Jounin," Sarutobi continued, smiling. "Quite impressive. You've even surpassed Itachi's record." Naruko's smile faded for a moment at the comparison. Sarutobi noticed but said nothing further on the matter. "It's getting late. You should grab some ramen before Ichiraku closes. You're dismissed, Naruko-kun." Naruko offered a salute and vanished. Sarutobi watched the monument outside with a fond smile. She's growing into someone remarkable. If only her parents could see her now. Later at Ichiraku. Naruko sat at the counter, happily enjoying her second bowl of miso ramen. Iruka sat beside her, eating more slowly. "So, Naruko, how did the mission go?" Iruka asked between bites. Naruko paused to answer, challenging at first, "But I got the job done. How are your students doing?" Iruka brightened. "Tomorrow's the Jinan final exam. Some really promising students this year. Uchiha Sasuke, Shikamaru, and Kuji are all set to graduate." Naruko smiled proudly at the news and paid for their meals before heading home. The next day, academy graduation. Iruka stood with pride, watching his students receive their forehead protectors. Among them were Sasuke, Sakura, and Konohamaru. The young Sarutobi had been accelerated, thanks to his determination and the guidance he received from Naruko. Mizuki handed out the last protectors with a polite, "Well done, everyone." After the ceremony, Iruka went to the Hokage's office with the new team rosters. Sarutobi reviewed each student's file, smiling when he saw his grandson's name. "Oh, Konohamaru made it. I must congratulate him soon. And maybe ask him to skip the prank jutsu Naruko taught him." Iruka chuckled knowingly. They spent the next 2 hours discussing team compositions until a ninja burst in with alarming news. "Sandaime-sama. The scroll of sealing has been stolen." Sarutobi acted immediately, sending out search squads. Iruka hurried to find Mizuki, but at his apartment, he found something suspicious: blueprints, schedules, and documents pointing to the scroll's location. Realization dawned: Mizuki was the thief. In the forest. Mizuki waited beneath a tree, a large scroll beside him, when Iruka arrived. "Mizuki. Why did you take the scroll?" Iruka demanded. Mizuki sneered, "With this scroll, I can become powerful. This village never recognized me. And they even allowed someone like Naruko into the ninja ranks." Iruka dodged a large weapon thrown his way but was struck by a few hidden kunai. Despite the pain, he managed to trick Mizuki by escaping with the real scroll hidden in a log. A swift rescue. Cornered and exhausted, Iruka prepared for the worst as Mizuki charged. Just then, a blur of movement and a gust of wind filled the air. Mizuki cried out as a massive chakra surge knocked him back. A short Onbu figure appeared, their fox mask glowing under the moonlight. "Don't touch Iruka-sensei," the voice said firmly. Mizuki turned, furious, only to stop in shock as the Onbu removed her mask. "Naruko?" With a swift, precise movement, Naruko disarmed Mizuki. No final blow was needed, her presence alone was enough to end the conflict. She neutralized the situation without causing permanent harm, demonstrating strength, control, and compassion. Iruka looked up, relieved and smiling. "You're all right, Iruka-sensei?" "Sorry I'm late, I took a wrong turn," Naruko said sheepishly. Profile, Uzumaki Naruko. Age, 16. Village, Kanahagakure. Rank, Tokubutsu Jounin, Anbu Captain. Mission Record. D Rank, 50. C Rank, 15. B Rank, 27. A Rank, 17. S Rank, 1. Abilities. Ninjutsu, Advanced. Genjutsu, Moderate. Taijutsu, Exceptional. Notable info. Human vessel of the nine-tailed fox. Protégé of Jiraiya. Graduated at 5. Promoted to Chonin at 7. Joined Anbu at 8 under Morino Aviki and Mitarashi Anko. Became Anbu Captain at 11. Codename, the White Fox of Konoha. Back at the village, the third Hokage, Sarutobi, stepped out of the building with a small, thoughtful smile on his face. Around him, many Jounin and Chonin were in a mild state of concern, discussing matters with one another. Has anyone located the scroll? One Chonin asked, glancing around anxiously. Nearby, members of the Anbu stood alert, scanning the area. One of them, dressed in a black cloak, asked calmly, "Where is Captain Uzumaki?" Those familiar with the short, blonde captain began to look around, quickly realizing that Naruko was not present among them. Sarutobi took a step forward, gently holding his lit pipe. There is no need for concern. Naruko and Iruka have recovered the scroll of sealing and handled the situation accordingly. Relief swept through the gathered shinobi at this reassuring news, and Sarutobi dismissed them so they could return to their duties. With a quiet sigh, he made his way back to his office, where he resumed his observations through his crystal ball. Within its magical surface, he watched as Naruko supported Iruka, the two making their way back toward the village. "You're doing wonderfully, just as your parents would have hoped," Sarutobi thought with quiet pride, as the images slowly faded from view. It was 2 days after the incident. Most of the shinobi in the village had already moved on, while a few simply brushed it off. Iruka was still busy finalizing the team assignments, leaving the Jounin team designations to the Hokage, who had requested only a copy of the rookie Jinan roster. Sarutobi was currently in a meeting with the Jounin instructors to discuss the new Jinan teams. Naruko, who had been invited to the meeting, observed quietly as the Jounin and the Hokage reviewed the files. Today, she wasn't wearing her Anbu uniform, though she still had her signature mask with her. Instead, she wore the standard Tokubutsu Jounin attire, customized in sleek midnight black rather than the usual navy. Through the eye slits of her mask, Naruko noticed a silver-haired Jounin not paying attention to the discussion. Instead, he was fully engrossed in reading a small, orange-covered book. Shaking her head with a sigh, she walked over to him. "Kakashi Niazan, maybe save Jiraiya's novel for later. The Hokage is trying to get your attention," Naruko said, approaching the man she respectfully called an older brother. Kakashi looked up at the sound of her voice and smiled slightly before catching sight of the Hokage's unimpressed expression. He gave a sheepish wave in apology while Naruko quietly chuckled, which earned her a light tap on the head from him. Peering into the crystal ball, Kakashi and Naruko watched the scene at the academy. Uchiha Sasuke sat by the window, seemingly unaware of the minor chaos around him as a few girls argued over who would sit next to him. "So that's him? This year's top rookie, Uchiha Sasuke?" Asuma asked, glancing toward his father, the Hokage. Sarutobi nodded while the other Jounin looked on. "The only remaining Uchiha in the village," Kurenai added, her red eyes focused on the screen. Kakashi, however, looked past Sasuke and noticed Konohamaru glaring at the boy. Naruko, following Kakashi's gaze, laughed as she saw Konohamaru climb up on his desk and lean right into Sasuke's personal space. The rest of the room watched the amusing interaction. "So that's Itachi's younger sibling?" Naruko asked after calming down. The Jounin watched as the girls in class began dragging Konohamaru away from Sasuke, clearly unimpressed with the interruption. "Konohamaru always finds a way to be the center of attention," Naruko said, heading toward the back of the room as the Hokage cleared his throat to begin assigning teams. Naruko started zoning out as her mind drifted elsewhere. Within her thoughts, Naruko found herself in front of a massive door sealed with a complex locking mechanism. From her pocket, she retrieved a plain-looking key and inserted it into the lock. As it clicked, a seal appeared and began to withdraw from the surface of the door. Naruko stepped forward into the large chamber to speak with the Kyuubi. Inside, she approached the enormous gate. "Kyuubi, time to wake up," Naruko called out. The great fox stirred, yawning and stretching within its prison. "What is it now?" The fox replied, its deep voice echoing off the chamber walls, its eyes glowing with mild irritation. Naruko took a seat, her expression thoughtful. "Remind me again." How did my father manage to stop you? She asked, partly to provoke a reaction. The fox growled in response. Naruko smiled knowingly, but then her expression turned serious. I've been thinking. Is there a way for me to learn some of your techniques and wisdom? She asked, watching the fox react with surprise. An interesting request, the Kyuubi said. If you're sincere, perhaps it's time someone carried on my knowledge. But if you want to learn, you'll need to start treating me with proper respect. Use my name, and stop yelling. Before Naruko could reply, a wave of chakra washed over her, and she was brought back to reality. Back in the meeting room, Naruko found herself being stared at by the Jounin and the Hokage. She raised an eyebrow in confusion. Welcome back to reality, Naruko-kun, Sarutobi said dryly. Some of the Jounin chuckled. Naruko exhaled a long sigh and offered a quick apology. Alright, let's proceed with team assignments, Sarutobi said as the Jounin stepped forward to receive their folders. Teams 1 through 6 were assigned quickly. When Sarutobi reached Team 7, a small smile formed on his face. Uzumaki Naruko, you'll lead Team 7. The room went silent. Naruko looked stunned, then loudly protested. You want me to lead a Jinan team? I'm an Anbu captain, not a mentor for academy students. Sarutobi raised an eyebrow at her tone. Let Kakashi Niazen do it. She added with a huff. Kakashi stepped in, calmly explaining, you need to lead a team of shinobi your own age, Naruko. Not seasoned professionals. Naruko groaned, knowing she couldn't argue for long. Then who's taking over my squad? She asked. Sarutobi pointed beside her. Naruko turned to find Kakashi standing nearby. But he's already a Jounin. She argued. Sarutobi rummaged through a nearby cabinet and tossed her a folded vest. Naruko caught it midair. What's this? A bribe? She asked as she examined the black vest in her size. You'll take the team, Sarutobi stated simply. Naruko turned, sighing loudly. No way, she said, stamping her foot. She performed a transformation technique and playfully attempted to charm her way out. The room erupted in chaos as the male Jounin fell over dramatically, prompting an annoyed Kurenai to scold them. Sarutobi regained his composure and delivered the final word. Regardless of your antics, you'll lead this team. Your official rank is now Rookie Jounin. Sarutobi continued, your team consists of Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura, and my grandson, Konohamaru. Naruko frowned but didn't argue further. I'm trusting you with Konohamaru's training, Sarutobi added. Naruko raised her hand to protest again, but Sarutobi silenced her. You'll meet your team this afternoon. Use this time to review their files and prepare a final evaluation. With that, the Jounin were dismissed. As she exited, Naruko caught up with Kakashi, who was heading to Anbu headquarters. Kakashi Niazen, wait up. She called out. He turned toward her. Can you help me train them? Maybe take Sasuke under your wing? I think I can handle Konohamaru and Sakura, but I don't know much about the Sharingan. Kakashi gave her a casual nod. I'll advise you, but don't count on me being there constantly. Naruko smiled and disappeared in a puff of smoke. She reappeared near Ichiraku Ramen for a quick lunch, passing a dengo stand where a familiar purple-haired Jounin waved her over. Konnichiwa, Anko Nichin. Naruko greeted warmly. Hey, Naruko-chan. Want to join me for some dengo? Anko offered. Naruko politely declined, not wanting to intrude. Anko shrugged and continued eating, glancing at Naruko's vest. Did the Hokage move you out of Anbu? The old man thinks I'm better off mentoring Jinan my own age, Naruko replied, looking to the sky. Anko raised a brow. You're training the Uchiha kid and the Hokage's grandson? That's quite the assignment. Naruko nodded, still not fully thrilled. Well, at least you kept your mask and that impressive sword, Anko said with a grin, pointing at Naruko's Anbu mask. Naruko pulled her blade out briefly with a grin. Yeah, but I guess my sword won't be doing much for now. She waved goodbye. See you around, Anko Nichin. Enjoy your day. Anko chuckled. I'll miss your energy, kid, she said softly as she paid for her meal. Meanwhile, at the academy, the newly graduated Jinan waited for team assignments. Among them, Sakura and Ino were engaged in a mild disagreement over who would end up on Sasuke's team. Konohamaru, on the other hand, was focused on a shogi match with Shikamaru, while Kuji snacked beside them. Shikamaru Niazen, who do you think will be on our teams? Konohamaru asked. Probably based on our grades, Shikamaru replied with a yawn. Too troublesome to think about. Just then, Iruka entered the classroom with a list in hand. You are no longer students. You're now official shinobi of the Hidden Leaf, Iruka said seriously. But the real challenge starts now. He began reading off the team assignments. When he reached Team 7, the room grew quiet. Team 7 will consist of Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura, and Sarutobi Konohamaru. Gasps filled the room. Konohamaru stood up. Why am I paired with him and her? He said, pointing to Sasuke and Sakura, who immediately reacted, Sakura not appreciating the remark. Sasuke was the top of the class, and Sakura was the top kunoichi, Iruka said calmly. Konohamaru, your academic scores were average, and you barely passed the physicals. You ranked last overall. The room chuckled gently, and Iruka called for silence as he continued with the team assignments. Just stay out of my way, okay? Sasuke said, brushing past Konohamaru, who didn't bother reacting and simply returned to his seat. Sakura, eager to impress Sasuke, complimented him on being the top student. However, all she received in return was a dismissive glance and an offhand remark. You too. Don't be a distraction, Sasuke said bluntly. Sakura looked hurt, her eyes starting to water. Iruka-sensei simply sighed and continued announcing the teams. Once all teams had been called, Iruka moved to open the classroom door, expecting the Jounin instructors to enter. But instead of walking in, they suddenly appeared in the middle of the classroom through teleportation techniques, startling the students. One by one, the Jounin stepped forward as their names were called, escorting their teams out. When it came to the final team, however, Iruka hesitated. Team 7's instructor will be. Iruka trailed off, eyes widening in shock as he read the name. Uzumaki Naruko. Gasps filled the room as students looked around, expecting a tall, commanding figure. But no one responded to the name. Just then, a soft crash came from the hallway, and the classroom door creaked open. A young woman with a masked face stumbled in, breathing slightly heavily. Sorry I'm late. I was helping an elderly woman cross the street, she said with a smile beneath her mask. Shikamaru and Kuji grinned widely, recognizing their old friend, though they were a little disappointed she wasn't their teacher. Sakura tilted her head skeptically. That's our Jounin-sensei? She's not what I expected. As the other Jounin stood with respectful postures, Sakura noticed something unusual. Naruko was wearing a large sword strapped to her back. That sword is huge, she thought, eyes wide. One of the other Jounin, clearly familiar with Naruko, nodded. No worries, Captain Uzumaki. You're just in time. Naruko gave a small nod, then stepped aside to speak quietly with Iruka. Despite Iruka's initial confusion, he accepted the Hokage's decision to promote Naruko and assign her to lead a team. Iruka turned back to the class. All right. Team 7, follow your instructor. The three members stood up and walked out with Naruko, who still wore her mask. Meanwhile, Iruka called the remaining teams and their senseis. At the Hokage monument. Team 7 sat quietly as Naruko observed them closely. She was analyzing their chakra levels beneath the mask. The Uchiha has strong potential. The Haruno girl has enough for the basics. And Konohamaru's chakra level is a little higher than hers, she noted. Naruko straightened up. All right, let's begin with introductions. Introductions? Sakura asked curiously. What should we say, Naruko-senpai? Tell me about your likes, dislikes, and your dreams for the future, Naruko replied. Also, call me Naruko-senpai. I'm not much older than you, except for Konohamaru. You can call me sensei. Why don't you go first? Sasuke said, his tone serious. Naruko tapped her chin thoughtfully. All right then. I'm Uzumaki Naruko. I don't really feel like sharing my likes. As for dislikes, I dislike giving up, and I don't believe in shortcuts to gaining true strength. She turned her gaze to the Hokage faces carved into the mountain. My dream is to become Hokage, to surpass the others before me and have the village acknowledge me for who I am. There was a quiet pause as her team processed her words. Sakura inched closer to her teammates, her interest piqued. So, we know her name, a little about what she dislikes, and her goal, Sakura whispered. Both Konohamaru and Sasuke nodded. All right, your turn, Konohamaru, Naruko said, folding her arms and leaning against the railing. I'm Sarutobi Konohamaru. I like training, pulling harmless pranks, and learning new techniques from Grandpa. I don't like when people only see me as the Hokage's grandson. My dream is to become Hokage and have people recognize me for me. Naruko nodded with a hidden smile behind her mask. That's an admirable goal, she thought, before turning to Sakura. I'm Haruno Sakura. Well, there's someone I admire a lot, she said, casting a quick glance at Sasuke. My hobbies include reading and... She trailed off with a giggle. And my dream is... Well, it's personal. Dislikes? Naruko asked gently. I guess. Konohamaru, Sakura replied with a frown. Konohamaru stood up indignantly. What did I ever do to you? He said, his hands balled into fists. All right, that's enough, Naruko said calmly, her voice firm but composed. Konohamaru, let's not argue with your teammates. We're a team now. Konohamaru huffed and sat back down. Yes, sensei. Naruko smiled beneath the mask. Good. And finally. Sasuke? Sasuke crossed his arms. I'm Uchiha Sasuke. There are a lot of things I don't like. I'm not sure there's anything I really like, either. I don't consider it a dream, but my goal is to rebuild my clan and confront someone important from my past. The room grew quiet. Konohamaru shuffled away slightly, uneasy. Sakura, meanwhile, watched Sasuke with admiration in her eyes. Naruko took a moment to reflect on her students. All right, I've got a passionate kunoichi, a determined grandson of the Hokage, and a focused Uchiha. This should be interesting. Okay. You all have your quirks, but I like that. Starting tomorrow, we'll begin with something simple. A little survival training. Survival training? Why? We already trained in the academy, Sakura said with confusion. Konohamaru nodded in agreement. Naruko gave a playful smile under the mask. This isn't ordinary training. It's the real Genin test. Wait, what? Konohamaru blinked in surprise. Only 9 out of the 27 graduates will become full Genin, Naruko explained. The rest will return to the academy for more training. The failure rate is 66%. Gasps erupted from her students. Told you it'd surprise you, Naruko chuckled. Meet me tomorrow at 5 a.m. sharp. Bring all your shinobi gear. And be ready, this test is more about your mindset than your skills. Dash. The next morning at 5 a.m. Team 7 assembled at Training Field 7. Sakura greeted Sasuke sleepily, while Konohamaru tried his best to stay awake. Sasuke stood silently, already focused. After 3 long hours, Naruko finally arrived, dressed in her full jounin gear with her large sword across her back and pouches neatly arranged on her belt. Good morning, everyone, she said cheerfully with a wave. You're late. Sakura and Konohamaru said in unison. Sorry, someone took my alarm clock, so I had to wait for the store to open and get a new one. Naruko apologized, though her team didn't seem particularly interested in her explanation. Well, at least my excuse was half true. Unlike Kakashi Ni's usual stories, she thought, remembering what had happened to her previous alarm clock, now nothing more than broken parts. Far away at Onbu headquarters, a certain masked captain with a fondness for dogs suddenly sneezed. Someone must be talking about me, Kakashi mused, turning back to his paperwork. Naruko strolled over to a nearby tree stump and gently placed her brand new alarm clock on top. All right, this is set until 11 a.m., she said, pulling 2 small bells from her pocket and showing them to the team. Your goal is to take these bells from me before noon. But there are only 2 bells, Sakura pointed out, confused. Naruko smiled behind her mask. Exactly. That means at least one of you will end up without a bell, and that person will be considered as having failed this test. You could all fail if you don't take this seriously. You're allowed to use shuriken, of course, safely. You won't be able to succeed unless you give it your best effort, she said, holding the bells out. Sakura frowned with concern. But what if someone gets hurt, Naruko-sensei? Sakura asked. Before Naruko could respond, Konohamaru jumped in, grinning. Yeah, and you're super short, too. Naruko's cheerful demeanor shifted into a calm seriousness. In the real world, the ones who spend too much time talking and not enough time training often fall behind, she replied gently. So let's skip the chatter, Mr. Confident. She raised her hand, signaling the start of the exercise. Konohamaru, visibly irritated, pulled out a practice kunai and charged forward. Sakura and Sasuke were taken aback by his sudden move. In the blink of an eye, Naruko was behind him, gently redirecting his kunai and immobilizing his arm with a smooth technique. Sakura's jaw dropped. I didn't even see her move. She thought. Whoa there. I didn't even say start yet, Naruko said with a light tone, releasing Konohamaru and giving him a soft push toward Sakura. Now that your motivation is fired up, let's get started. With a cheerful call, begin. She launched the challenge. The basics of being a ninja include staying unnoticed and hiding effectively, Naruko thought, sensing the chakra of her students as they scattered. She nodded slightly to herself. They're doing well. Just then, Konohamaru boldly stepped out from his hiding spot, grinning confidently. Come on, Naruko Nichin. Let's battle. Naruko raised an eyebrow, amused. He's got guts, I'll give him that. You're a little early, but alright. Let's see what you've got. Konohamaru grinned. The only thing early is your bedtime. He charged again. Naruko reached into her pouch and pulled out a small Walkman. She put in the earbuds and pressed play, music starting to fill her ears. Konohamaru slowed. Wait, why are you listening to music right now? Because I enjoy it. And trust me, I won't need complete focus just yet, she replied with a wink. Provoked, Konohamaru rushed forward, swinging a punch that Naruko easily caught. He tried a roundhouse kick next, but Naruko ducked under it, not even glancing his way. Another punch missed entirely as she vanished from sight. A shinobi isn't easily provoked, Naruko's voice came from behind him, making Konohamaru freeze. And a shinobi never lets their guard down. Sakura watched with wide eyes. What's that hand sign? Is she using ninjutsu? She wondered. Sasuke narrowed his eyes, intrigued. Is she actually using a fire technique at close range? She's not just playing around. Worried for Konohamaru, Sakura called out, Be careful, Konohamaru. She's strong. With a playful smirk, Naruko said, Hidden Leaf Ancient Taijutsu Supreme Technique. Her hands quickly struck a gentle, but startling, move that lifted Konohamaru off the ground, sending him tumbling away in surprise. Sakura and Sasuke both had sweat drops on their heads as they watched Konohamaru bounce slightly on the grass. Come on, Konohamaru. I know you've been trained better than that, Naruko encouraged, hands on her hips. Don't disappoint me now. Grimacing but determined, Konohamaru stood back up. I am your rival, he shouted, forming a hand sign. Suddenly, 5 clones appeared beside him. Oh? Shadow clone jutsu? Interesting, Naruko thought, forming the same sign herself. Sakura was impressed. Wait. They're not illusions. They're real clones. Konohamaru and his clones charged forward. Naruko smoothly sidestepped a punch from the first clone, guided the second's movement to the ground, and spun into a low sweep. Suddenly, the real Konohamaru latched onto her from behind. Got you, Naruko-sensei, he shouted. The real Konohamaru jumped in and punched. Only for Naruko to vanish in a puff of smoke. A clone? Konohamaru looked around, confused. At that moment, a looped rope wrapped around his ankle and yanked him upward, suspending him from a tree. Didn't see that coming, huh? Naruko said, hopping down from a branch to pick up the bell that had fallen during the scuffle. A ninja always checks for traps. Konohamaru flailed. Let me down. Lesson 1, Naruko said, raising her hand to calm him. Think beyond the obvious. A true ninja looks underneath the underneath. Sasuke, sensing an opportunity, launched a series of shuriken. Naruko dodged expertly, but her form disappeared, replaced by a log. Substitution jutsu? Sasuke realized too late. I've been spotted. Naruko, growing slightly bored, decided to test Sasuke directly. On her way through the woods, she found Sakura calling out for him. Naruko suppressed her chakra and approached silently. A tap on the shoulder and a brief technique later, Sakura found herself dazed and confused. Wah, what just happened? Where is Sasuke-kun? She turned to see him standing before her, only to hear, Sakura. You're so annoying. Sakura's eyes widened in disbelief as the illusion overwhelmed her senses. She collapsed gently to the forest floor, unconscious. From the trees, Naruko watched with a sigh. Maybe I went a little too far. Sasuke, hearing Sakura's cry, tensed and readied himself. A voice floated down behind him. Lesson number 2, Genjutsu. She fell for it immediately. He turned to see Naruko, arms crossed, music still playing from her Walkman. I'm not like the others, Sasuke said firmly, stepping forward, weapons drawn. Naruko smiled behind her mask. This could be fun. Sasuke unleashed a well-aimed flurry of shuriken and kunai. Naruko dodged swiftly but noticed they were meant to hit a tripwire behind her, not her directly. Clever. I see now why he was the top graduate this year. But I was the top rookie too, Naruko thought as she gracefully flipped through the air, skillfully dodging the kunai that had been released from Sasuke's trap. Sasuke darted forward, initiating a close-range taijutsu exchange. He leapt high, aiming a sharp kick toward Naruko's face. The blonde Jounin calmly blocked with her forearm, her attention focused as Sasuke followed up with a punch. Naruko caught Sasuke's fist with ease, now holding both of his arms. Sasuke smirked, lifting his leg again to catch Naruko off guard. Sensing his plan, Naruko blocked the attack with her forearms, bringing her face close to his. She noticed Sasuke's free hand wasn't reaching for one of the bells, so she took the opportunity. Letting go of Sasuke's leg, she placed her hand in front of his face and, with a light flick of her finger, sent him skidding backwards. Sasuke landed on his feet, rubbing his forehead with a mild wince. "Your taijutsu's solid," Naruko said, stretching her hand as she prepared for what came next. Sasuke quickly rose and began forming hand seals. Recognizing the sequence, Naruko mirrored him, catching up just as they reached the tiger seal. Simultaneously, they released the same technique. "Fire style, fireball jutsu," they shouted, launching two massive fireballs that collided in mid-air, dispersing waves of heat across the training field. Dash. Elsewhere, Sakura stirred awake, her head aching lightly. She sat up, confused, fragments of the genjutsu still lingering in her thoughts. "Sasuke tried to hurt me. But I'm okay?" she thought, blinking as she stood up and made her way through the training ground. Meanwhile, Konohamaru had finally escaped the elaborate traps he'd repeatedly stumbled into. His eyes lit up when he spotted the lunches Naruko had left. Hee. "I'll take mine and Sakura's." He grinned mischievously as he strolled toward the tree stumps. Dash. Back to Sasuke and Naruko. As the fire subsided, Sasuke scanned the scorched area. She disappeared. He thought. Suddenly, Naruko appeared directly in front of him. Her Anbu mask made her presence feel all the more imposing. "Paralysis jutsu," she whispered. Sasuke froze, unable to move. "What did you do? This isn't fair," he exclaimed in frustration, straining to move his limbs. Lesson 3, Ninjutsu, Naruko replied simply, walking away calmly. She sensed something was wrong with the lunches and suspected mischief from Konohamaru. Sasuke, meanwhile, struggled with the effects of the technique, his mind racing. "She's my age, but the difference in skill is huge." As he thought this, he saw Sakura approaching. From her expression, she looked furious. She rushed toward him, yelling, "There you are, Sasuke." Sasuke tried to ask what was wrong, but Sakura interrupted. "As much as I admire you, this is for earlier," she shouted. Without warning, she gave him a firm kick to the shin, making him stumble. The jolt snapped Sasuke out of the paralysis jutsu. Sakura then walked away, breathing deeply to calm herself. Naruko, who had retrieved Konohamaru and tied him gently to a stump for the lesson, checked her watch. Almost 11 a.m. time to wrap this up. She swiftly gathered Sasuke, still stunned, and found Sakura again by the stumps. With a teasing boo, Naruko startled her before calmly dragging both teammates back. Just as Sakura touched the stump, the alarm rang, signaling the end of the test. Dash. Naruko sat calmly, evaluating them as they regained consciousness. As Sasuke and Sakura opened their eyes, Naruko addressed them. "You're awake. Before you eat, it's time for your evaluation." All three straightened up, anticipation rising. "No need to return to the academy," Naruko said, prompting cheers from Sakura and Konohamaru. Sasuke remained quiet, still recovering. "Yes," Konohamaru exclaimed. "So that means?" "Yes," Naruko cut in with a serious expression, "all three of you should consider quitting as shinobi." Shocked silence followed her words. "What?" Konohamaru shouted. "Why? Just because we couldn't get the bells?" Naruko removed her Anbu mask, revealing her face. She tied her forehead protector tightly around her head. "Because right now, you're acting like selfish kids, not true ninjas," she said sternly. Sasuke, frustrated, lunged at her with a kunai. But in a flash, Naruko had disarmed him and gently pressed a training blade to his neck, not to harm, but to demonstrate her point. "This is why you're not ready," she said firmly. She backed off and tied Sasuke's hands gently with training wire. Ignoring Sakura's protests, Naruko turned toward her, eyes sharp. "Silence, Sakura. I've heard enough excuses. The team stared back, stunned. Do you think enemies will care if you were top of your class or not? Naruko continued. Titles mean nothing without teamwork. She turned her gaze to Sakura. Why is your headband hidden under your hair? Sakura mumbled, but Naruko continued. Your headband symbolizes growth. Wear it with pride. And your obsession with a teammate? That's not the focus of a kunoichi. Take your training seriously, or I'll have you sent back. She then looked at Sasuke. And you? So full of pride, you couldn't ask for help or plan ahead. You think being a genius is enough? Sasuke glared, but Naruko remained calm. You couldn't solve a simple test with a clear answer, teamwork. Sakura objected, but there were only 2 bells. And that was the point, Naruko replied. You were meant to work together, to share, to support one another. That's what true shinobi do. She addressed each of them. Sakura, you ignored Konohamaru when he was closer than Sasuke. Konohamaru, you ran around without direction despite all your training. Sasuke, you charged in recklessly without understanding the full picture. Then she added with a faint smile, but you're not hopeless. You just need to learn. The 3 looked up at Naruko, who stood tall and proud. Pass this lesson, and you'll understand what it means to be part of a team. Doing what you did, Sasuke, could put the whole team in a difficult situation, Naruko said firmly as she carefully pulled out her kunai again, holding it close to Sasuke's neck. Sakura, if you don't take this seriously, Konohamaru won't get to join us. Her tone was serious enough to make the 3 of them pause in surprise. I'll give you all one more chance after lunch, but it will be more challenging to earn the bells, Naruko continued as she gently freed Sasuke from the wires and sheathed her kunai. Those who want to keep trying may eat now. But don't share your food with Konohamaru. Konohamaru frowned and began to protest, asking why he couldn't eat. It's a consequence for trying to take food that isn't yours, Naruko explained, then turned to leave, bringing her own lunch with her. Konohamaru's stomach rumbled loudly as he tried not to watch Sasuke and Sakura eat. Sasuke sighed and offered some of his lunch to Konohamaru. Here. Have some, Sasuke said, catching Sakura's surprised glance. Naruko said not to feed him. Don't worry, I don't sense Naruko nearby, Sasuke reassured as Konohamaru began eating gratefully. If Naruko saw this, it would just make things more complicated. Sakura smiled and decided to share some of her food as well, making Konohamaru happy. From a distance, Naruko watched with a soft smile before suddenly teleporting in front of Team 7. What's going on here? Naruko's voice was firm but warm as she appeared before them. The 3 immediately straightened up, noticing her serious expression. You 3 have passed, she said, smiling brightly with a confident grin. Sakura and Konohamaru cheered, while Sasuke looked curious. A ninja must look beneath the surface, Naruko said thoughtfully. An Anbu captain once told me, those who break the rules and codes of the shinobi world lose their honor. But even more important. She faced her team proudly. Those who don't support their teammates are the ones who truly lose their way. That's the end of today's lesson, Naruko announced. Starting tomorrow, Team 7 will begin their missions. But always remember this rule, on my team, everyone contributes. No one gives up or quits. If you don't take your duties seriously, I will personally make sure you understand the importance of teamwork. As they began to leave the training ground, Konohamaru struggled to move but realized he was still tied to the tree stump. Hey! Hey! Untie me! He called out, but the only response was Naruko's cheerful voice. All right, team. To celebrate, let's go to Ichiraku for some ramen. My treat. Naruko announced, and the others quickly joined in, excited and laughing. Dear YouTube family. This is all for now. Thank you so much for watching and being part of this journey. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel, it means the world to me. Lots of love and positive vibes. 6 Path Weeb.